Gregory "Pappy" Boyington stood on the tarmac at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal in early September 1942, watching a small group of young Marine pilots lounging beside their Corsairs. He caught pieces of their conversation, the word "ancient," a burst of laughter, and knew instantly they were talking about him. At 36, he looked older than the rest. Weathered face, deep lines around the eyes, a soft gut courtesy of hard drinking and irregular meals. To these 22-year-olds, he was just another washed-up officer marking time until retirement. None of them knew he'd spent 2 brutal years flying with the American volunteer group in China, the famed Flying Tigers, where he'd downed 6 Japanese aircraft and survived some of the deadliest air battles over Burma. They didn't know he'd already learned the hard way that dogfighting wasn't youth and reflexes. It was geometry, timing, and the willingness to fly closer to the edge than anyone else dared. To them, he was a relic. To him, they were children who didn't know yet how quickly inexperience killed. Boyington had been underestimated all his life, first as the illegitimate son of a dentist in Idaho, then as a college wrestler who didn't look dangerous until he broke someone's nose, and later as a Marine fighter pilot with a reputation for brawling and ignoring authority. When he rejoined the Marines in 1942 after a messy discharge and re-enlistment, even the brass doubted him. A man his age belonged in a training squadron stateside, not requested into the Pacific meat grinder where Japanese Zeros still dominated the skies. But Boyington had returned with a fury, at the system that rewarded polished officers over proven fighters, at ex-wives and creditors, and at the establishment that valued etiquette over experience. More importantly, he had the one advantage no young pilot could fake, knowing exactly what kept you alive in the air. He ignored the whispers predicting he'd be dead in a week. Youth brought speed. Age brought survival instincts. If the Marine Corps wouldn't give him a first-rate squadron, he'd build one from scratch. So, in late September 1942, Boyington began quietly combing through personnel records at Marine Aircraft Group 11, looking for the rejects, pilots who'd been disciplined, demoted, grounded, or one mistake away from court-martial. He found them quickly, a man who buzzed an admiral's yacht, another who punched his commanding officer, several who drank too much or fought too often, and others simply unable to function under rigid regulation. These were the misfits everyone else avoided. To Boyington, they were perfect. The qualities that made them trouble on the ground, aggression, defiance, recklessness, were the very traits that could make them lethal in the air if molded correctly. By early October, he'd gathered 27 of them. The Marine Corps designated them VMF 214, but from the moment they assembled, everyone called them the Black Sheep Squadron. Boyington laid out new rules. Forget textbook formations and standard doctrine. Zeros could outturn any American fighter, so never enter a turning fight. Attack out of the sun, use speed and altitude, dive hard, fire once, and climb out before the enemy could respond. Fight in pairs, trust your wingman, ignore rank in combat, and take any shot you saw. His philosophy was simple: aggression wins, hesitation kills. The Black Sheep trained relentlessly through October and November, developing the instincts and coordination they'd need to survive. Slowly, the mockery faded as the squadron realized the old man could outfly most of them. When VMF 214 deployed to the front in September 1943, they were no longer a group of outcasts. They were predators. Guadalcanal tested them immediately. Henderson Field still endured daily Japanese raids, and Boyington's first combat mission came on September 16, 1943, when intelligence reported a large enemy formation heading for Allied shipping near Vella La Vella. 24 Corsairs scrambled. At 15,000 feet, they spotted nearly 40 Japanese aircraft. The moment Boyington saw a Zero drift from formation, he barked for his squadron to hold position, then dove alone. His wingman cursed and followed. Boyington closed the distance and shredded the Zero in a 3-second burst. VMF 214 plunged into the fight behind him, slashing through enemy formations instead of turning with them, and within 15 minutes the Black Sheep had destroyed 6 aircraft without a single loss. Mockery died that day. Boyington, the ancient major, had outthought, not outreacted, his enemies. What followed was a 3-month storm of violence. Between late September and Christmas 1943, VMF 214 racked up staggering numbers. Over 60 enemy aircraft destroyed at a loss of 7. Boyington's own tally reached 16 by December. His innovations, like the Boyington Weave and the high-side gun pass, negated the Zero's maneuverability and turned its light frame into a liability. Japanese pilots began specifically avoiding corsairs bearing the Black Sheep insignia, and intelligence intercepts recorded them warning one another about the American major who hunts like a wolf. Boyington flew with cold patience, hitting only when the angle was perfect, breaking off when survival demanded it. Fame followed. War correspondents wrote glowing profiles of the hard-drinking major leading a squadron of rejects who somehow fought like champions. Public affairs officers reluctantly embraced him as a wartime symbol. By January 1944, Boyington had become a strategic problem for the Japanese. Intercepts revealed they'd assigned elite pilots to the Rabaul region specifically to kill him. He was just 2 victories shy of Eddie Rickenbacker's record of 26 American air-to-air kills. The pressure was immense, and his wingmen saw him pushing harder, flying more riskily, chasing kills with a focus that bordered on desperation. On January 3, 1944, VMF 214 launched a fighter sweep over Rabaul, the most dangerous target in the Pacific. Boyington spotted a lone Zero climbing toward the bombers, recognized it as bait, and instead dove at 4 hidden fighters waiting below. His ambush worked. He blasted one Zero instantly, but a second layer of Japanese fighters swept down from above. His aircraft shuddered under enemy fire. Over the radio, Boyington said his engine was failing and he was heading for the water. Minutes later, his corsair ditched into the Pacific. His wingmen saw him climb into a raft but had to leave when fuel ran low. For 3 days, search and rescue scoured the area. Nothing. The Marines declared him missing, presumed dead. Newspapers mourned him as a hero who had reached 26 kills on his final mission. But Boyington wasn't dead. A Japanese submarine had pulled him from the water hours after the crash, and he spent the next 20 months in captivity, starved, beaten, interrogated, and isolated in secret compounds like Ofuna, where the Geneva Convention meant nothing. He survived mock executions, starvation rations, and psychological warfare by clinging to sheer stubbornness, the same stubbornness that had kept him alive in the skies. To the world, he had vanished. To the Japanese, he was a valuable prisoner. But to the generations that followed, Boyington's legend had already solidified. The rebel major who took a squadron of rejects and turned them into the most feared hunters in the Pacific, proving, once and for all, that age does not slow a warrior, it sharpens him.